The Oklahoma plains stretched endlessly under a pale morning sun, dust devils dancing across the barren earth. The Johnson family, a small, determined unit, traveled slowly along the dirt track, their wagon wheels crunching the gravel. Thomas Johnson, a man with a strong frame hardened by years of toil, glanced at his wife Mary, whose hands nervously adjusted the scarf around her neck. Their children, Elsie and Samuel, stared out at the horizon, a mixture of awe and fatigue in their eyes. Life had been merciless. The drought had claimed their crops, leaving them with little more than hope and grit. When Thomas had heard about a house for sale on this lonely stretch of prairie, he felt a flicker of excitement he hadn't felt in years. "It's not much," he said, "but it's ours to shape." The house was older than they expected, its weathered oak boards gray and worn. Yet, amid the decay, there was an odd charm. The tall windows glinting in the sun like watchful eyes, the porch sagging slightly as if weighed by time. Thomas helped Mary down from the wagon and held out his hand. "A fresh start?" he said. She nodded, a mix of relief and unease flooding her. They didn't notice the first peculiarity. Each door inside had a strange lock. From the outside, the doors looked ordinary. But the moment someone stepped in, they could be locked from the inside, and the key would vanish. It was subtle, almost invisible, yet it left an uncomfortable sense of restriction in the air. That night, the wind swept across the plains, rattling the shutters and stirring the prairie grass. The Johnsons sat around a modest fire in the living room. The furniture was dusty, but it was solid and sturdy, perfect for rebuilding a home. Mary tried to reassure the children. "Old houses make strange noises. The floors, the walls. It's just the wind," she said, her voice softer than she felt. But then, when she tried to close the pantry to store some canned food, the door clicked shut and refused to budge from the inside. Thomas frowned and grabbed a chair to wedge it open. Samuel's eyes were wide. "Dad, why is it stuck?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Just old hinges, son," Thomas said, though even he felt a flicker of unease. Elsie, meanwhile, giggled nervously, imagining invisible hands closing the doors for fun. That night, the family huddled together, the wind outside a reminder that they were not entirely alone in the vast prairie. Over the following days, the house's strangeness became more apparent. The children would occasionally whisper about a shadow that flitted across the hall when no one was there. Samuel swore he had seen something move past the doorway at night, a fleeting figure just beyond the lamplight. Mary tried to calm them. "It's just your imagination," she said repeatedly, though her own heart was not entirely convinced. She found herself pausing in doorways, half expecting someone or something to appear. One evening, Elsie pointed to a handprint that had appeared on the inside of the parlor door where no one had entered. Mary ran her fingers over the mark. "How?" she whispered. The children watched silently. Even Thomas, practical and grounded, felt a shiver of uncertainty. Thomas knew he couldn't ignore the mystery of the locked doors. He went to the nearest town and spoke to the locals. They shared stories of the house, though they spoke in hushed tones. The house had belonged to the Carrington family, who had disappeared without a trace decades ago. "They said the doors locked for a reason," an old man murmured, leaning on his cane. "Not to trap, but to protect. From what? Nobody knows. Only that it keeps teaching lessons." Thomas returned to the house, both skeptical and wary. Mary was quiet as she tended the fire that night, thinking about the Carringtons. Perhaps the house wasn't trying to frighten them, it was trying to teach them something. By October, the harvest moon hung low, painting the plains in silvery light. Samuel wandered into the attic and found a small, dust-covered journal tucked into a corner. The cover was brittle, and the pages smelled faintly of mildew. "It's Lillian Carrington's journal," he told Mary as she joined him. Mary read aloud, her voice trembling. The journal spoke of fear, loneliness, and hope. Lillian had grown up in this house, learning to navigate the strange locked doors, which seemed to have a life of their own. "It's as if she's asking for help," Mary whispered. Thomas looked over her shoulder, eyes narrowed, understanding that their house was not empty. It was filled with memories, and perhaps a presence that longed to be remembered. The next week brought panic. Samuel ran screaming into his room. The door had locked behind him. Thomas and Mary rushed to help, pulling and prying, but it would not budge. In desperation, Thomas smashed the lock. Inside, Samuel pointed at something on the floor, a small worn shoe, too tiny to belong to him or Elsie. Mary's heart ached with fear and curiosity. Was it a remnant of the past? A message? The house was speaking in ways they didn't yet understand. Soon, the whispers began, faint at first, like the wind through the cracks, then slowly forming words: "Help, please, listen." Mary prayed nightly, seeking protection and clarity. Thomas researched local customs and protective rituals from early Oklahoma settlers. They realized the house wasn't trying to harm them. It was reaching out, yearning to be understood, to be remembered. The whispers were sad, melancholic, yet filled with hope. Each night the family listened and responded with care, speaking softly into the rooms as if the walls themselves could hear. One gray afternoon, a stooped, elderly woman appeared at the fence. Her eyes were sharp, but her expression gentle. She introduced herself as Agnes, a friend of the Carrington family. "You've moved into a special house," she said, voice trembling slightly. "The doors lock for a reason. Not to trap you, but to teach you lessons you'll carry for the rest of your lives." Mary frowned. A teacher? How can a house teach lessons? Agnes smiled sadly. "Patience, humility, compassion. You will see if you listen." The children, wide-eyed, clung to their mother's skirts. Even Thomas felt a shiver of understanding. The days that followed were testing. Doors would lock unexpectedly, the pantry, the parlor, even the front hall. The family learned to slow down, to work together, to communicate. Frustration gave way to collaboration. Anger gave way to patience. They realized the house was reflecting their own emotions and behaviors. To move freely, they had to listen, care, and act thoughtfully. Slowly, their relationship grew stronger. They began to understand that the strange house was not a prison. It was a mirror. One morning, Elsie discovered a small bundle hidden in the attic, a doll, handmade and delicate, and a note written in fading ink, "For the family who listens." She hugged the doll tightly, tears rolling down her cheeks. Mary read the note aloud, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt in years. The house seemed to hum in approval, as if acknowledging their patience, their care, and their willingness to understand. For the first time, the Johnsons felt a connection that went beyond fear. They were part of something bigger, something meaningful, in a house that once only held memories. Mary continued reading Lillian Carrington's journal late into the night. Each page revealed more of the Carrington family's history. The storms they had endured, the love they had shared, and the tragedies that had struck them. The locked doors, it seemed, were meant to protect cherished memories, letters, and keepsakes during times of turmoil. They weren't afraid of the world outside, Mary whispered to Thomas. They were trying to preserve something precious, and maybe teach others to do the same. Thomas nodded, a thoughtful silence between them. The house was more than a home. It was a guardian of life's fragile, meaningful moments. Over the following weeks, the Johnsons realized the house mirrored their own struggles. Life on the plains was harsh, and they carried the weight of loss, disappointment, and fear of failure. Each time a door locked, each time a whisper stirred in the night, it reflected a piece of their own hearts. By learning patience, empathy, and mutual understanding, they unlocked more than doors. They unlocked their own ability to trust each other. Arguments softened into discussions. Frustration gave way to care. In a house that had once felt suffocating, they now felt guided. The town held its annual harvest festival. The Johnsons joined, leaving behind the creaking doors and whispering walls for a few hours of sunlight and music. At the festival, they shared their experiences, not the frightening whispers, not the locked doors, but the lessons of patience, cooperation, and appreciation for the small, precious moments of life. Neighbors listened, some skeptical, some touched. The family realized the house had not only transformed their private lives, but had prepared them to connect with their community with empathy and gratitude. That night, as the wind howled across the plains, the house remained calm. Doors that had once stubbornly locked now stayed open. Mary felt a profound sense of peace as she lay in bed, holding Samuel and Elsie close. The children slept soundly, no longer afraid of shadows or whispers. Thomas sat by the window, watching the moonlight reflect off the plains. For the first time in years, he felt a quiet certainty. The house had acknowledged their growth, their patience, and their willingness to learn. Samuel, ever curious, explored the attic again. Behind a loose brick, he found an old photograph, the Carrington family, smiling on the porch, Lillian's hand raised in a wave. Samuel felt a tug at his heart. They wanted someone to remember them, he said softly. Mary knelt beside him. And now we do, Samuel. We are their memory, she replied. For the first time, the house felt like a bridge across generations, connecting lives through care and remembrance. One morning, Thomas noticed something extraordinary. The front door swung open naturally, without resistance. The sunlight poured in, warmly, painting golden patterns on the floorboards. He stepped outside and breathed in the crisp prairie air. The house, with all its locked doors and hidden whispers, had released its hold. It was a gift of freedom, patience, and understanding, earned through care and attention. The family now understood the final lesson. The doors were never meant to trap them. They were a mirror of their growth. Agnes, the elderly neighbor, returned one afternoon. She stepped through the open doors and smiled knowingly. The house has accepted you, she said. Few understand its ways. Fewer still carry forward its lessons. Elsie ran to show her the handmade doll. Samuel presented Lillian's journal, and Mary simply hugged Agnes. The old woman's eyes glistened with tears. It was waiting for a family like yours, she whispered. For the first time, the Johnsons felt fully at home, not just in the house, but in a world filled with unseen guardians and legacies of care. As weeks turned into months, the Johnsons repaired the house, planted gardens, and mended fences. Every corner, every creaking floorboard became a testament to resilience and love. Yet, they never forgot the lessons learned: patience in trials, empathy toward others, respect for history, and the courage to listen to what is not spoken aloud. The house had given them more than shelter. It had given them the blueprint for a life well lived. One evening, Mary wrote a letter to Lillian Carrington, placing it carefully in the attic. Thank you for guiding us. We will remember your lessons and honor your life. You are not forgotten. Thomas carved their initials into the porch alongside the faded initials of the Carringtons. The act felt sacred, a bridge between past and present, a declaration that memories and lessons, once shared, could never be lost. The house seemed to hum softly, an acknowledgement that the family had understood the deepest purpose of its locked doors. Years passed. Elsie and Samuel grew up in the house, carrying the lessons learned within its walls. They would sometimes hear faint whispers, but the fear had vanished. The whispers became gentle reminders. Be patient, be kind, care for what is precious. The house on the Oklahoma plains had given the Johnsons more than a home. It had given them a gift far greater than wealth or comfort: wisdom, love, unity, and the courage to face life's hardships with grace. Thomas and Mary watched their children, hearts full. The wind blew softly across the plains, whispering an eternal truth. The doors that lock are the doors that teach. The hearts that open are the hearts that live. The Johnsons had unlocked the true treasure, not gold, not jewels, but the gift of understanding, empathy, and the quiet power of love.